It was June 5, 2002, at around 2 a.m., in the Smart family's home in Salt Lake City, Utah. Elizabeth Ann Smart, just 14 years old at the time, was being held captive in her bedroom by a man with a knife. This was the moment when everything changed for Elizabeth and her family. Brian David Mitchell, the man with the knife, had been acquaintances with the Smart family, even working for them as a handyman. He had gained their trust, but all of that was about to unravel. The scene was one of chaos and terror, with Elizabeth's younger sister Mary Catherine hiding in fear, pretending to be asleep. The moonlit night cast an eerie glow through the open window, as Mitchell's voice echoed in the room, ordering Elizabeth to get dressed and come with him. The air was thick with tension, and the sound of Mitchell's labored breathing was the only sound that filled the space. Elizabeth's mind was racing, trying to process what was happening to her, but her body seemed paralyzed with fear. As Mitchell led her out of the bedroom, he whispered to her, "Don't yell, or you'll be in big trouble." In this moment, Elizabeth Smart was a vulnerable 14-year-old girl, forced to comply with Mitchell's demands. He held the knife to her throat, his eyes cold and calculating, as he led her out of the house. Elizabeth's blonde hair was mussed, and her pink shorts were covered in dust from the floor. She was scared and confused, unsure of what was happening or where she was going. Mitchell's worn denim jeans and faded t-shirt seemed ordinary, but the knife in his hand made him a predator. As Mitchell and Elizabeth made their way out of the house, witnesses began to stir. The neighborhood was quiet, but the sound of Elizabeth's muffled screams echoed through the night air. Mr. Smart, Elizabeth's father, was awake and heard the commotion, but he didn't think much of it at the time, assuming it was just a dream. It wouldn't be until later, when Elizabeth's bedroom window was found open, that the family realized what had happened. The Smart family was in shock, wondering how someone they had trusted could commit such a heinous crime. Elizabeth Smart's life was forever changed when she was abducted from her home in Salt Lake City, Utah. She was 14 years old at the time, a bright and ambitious young girl who had big dreams for her future. Her parents, Ed and Lois Smart, were devoted parents who instilled in their children the importance of morality, faith, and family. Elizabeth had grown up in a close-knit community where everyone looked out for one another. She was a diligent student and an active member of her Mormon church. As a member of a devout Mormon family, Elizabeth's daily life revolved around her faith and her family. Her father, Ed Smart, was a successful businessman who had been working as a salesman for the pharmaceutical company Novartis at the time of her abduction. Elizabeth's mother, Lois Smart, was a homemaker who managed the household and cared for her children. Elizabeth's siblings, Mary Catherine and Charlie, adored their big sister and looked up to her as a role model. Elizabeth's parents encouraged her to be confident, independent, and strong-willed. Elizabeth's personality was that of a free spirit, always eager to explore the world around her. Her family described her as cheerful, intelligent, and adventurous. She loved to spend time outdoors and was an avid reader. Elizabeth's kindness and empathy towards others endeared her to her friends and family. She was well liked by everyone who knew her, and her tragic abduction was a shock to her entire community. Elizabeth's relationships with her family and friends were built on trust and love. She had a particularly close relationship with her sister Mary Catherine, who was just 6 years younger than her. Elizabeth's parents were involved in her life, always looking out for her best interests. Her friends at school admired her for her kindness and generosity. However, what they didn't know was that a stranger was secretly monitoring Elizabeth's every move. As the summer of 2002 began, Elizabeth's life was feeling increasingly secure. She had just finished 8th grade and was looking forward to a fun summer. Her family had just returned from a vacation in California, and Elizabeth was excited to spend time at home with her family. However, her father's recent promotion at work had brought a new level of stress into the household. Her parents were busy with work and family responsibilities, leaving Elizabeth more time to herself. Little did anyone know, a man named Brian David Mitchell was lurking in the shadows, secretly eyeing Elizabeth as his next target. Mitchell had worked for the Smart family as a handyman in the past, and they had trusted him enough to give him a key to their home. But something had changed in him, and he was now consumed by a dark and sinister obsession. It was during the early morning hours of June 5, 2002, that Mitchell's dark obsession came to fruition. Elizabeth's sister Mary Catherine pretended to be asleep as Mitchell entered Elizabeth's bedroom, knife point pressed against her throat. Elizabeth screamed, but her cries were muffled by the sound of Mary Catherine's pretend snoring. Was it mere coincidence that Mitchell chose Elizabeth's bedroom as his first target? Was this a crime of opportunity or a carefully planned attack? The Smart family was oblivious to the danger lurking outside their home. They had no reason to suspect that a trusted family friend had been hiding in plain sight. Mitchell's actions were nothing short of calculated, and he had chosen his victim with precision. But what drove Mitchell to commit such a heinous crime? Was it a twisted desire to fulfill a twisted prophecy, or simply a lust for power and control? As we delve into the details of this shocking case, one thing is clear: nothing could have prepared Elizabeth Smart or her family for the horrors that were about to unfold. It was a typical summer evening in Salt Lake City, Utah, on June 5, 2002, with clear skies and a temperature of 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The sun had just begun to set, casting a warm orange glow over the quiet neighborhood. Elizabeth Smart, a 14-year-old girl, was home alone in her bedroom with her 9-year-old sister Mary Catherine. The house was situated in a middle-class area near the University of Utah, with trees and flowers adorning the front yard. The air was calm, with a gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the trees. Brian David Mitchell, a 48-year-old handyman who worked for the Smart family, had been acquainted with them for several years. He had a history of erratic behavior and had been known to have a fascination with the Bible. Mitchell had previously expressed his desire to marry Elizabeth's mother and had even begun making romantic advances towards her. However, these advances were rejected, and Mitchell's behavior became increasingly erratic. The Smart family had grown wary of Mitchell's behavior and had begun to question his motives. On the evening of June 5, Mitchell arrived at the Smart home and convinced Elizabeth that he was there to talk to her mother. He told Elizabeth to get dressed and come with him, but when she refused, he pulled out a knife and threatened to harm her. Elizabeth's mother, Elizabeth Sr., was nowhere to be found, and her father, Ed Smart, was working out of town. Mary Catherine, Elizabeth's younger sister, pretended to be asleep out of fear, and Mitchell dragged Elizabeth out of her bedroom and into the night. Mitchell then took Elizabeth to a crude campsite on the outskirts of Salt Lake City, where she would spend the next 9 months in captivity. The most shocking detail of this crime is that Mitchell forced Elizabeth to dress up in all-white robes and took her with him in public, often using her as a prop in his attempts to recruit followers for his so-called prophet persona. They would walk through the streets, hand in hand, with Mitchell's wife Wanda Barzee by their side, and people would walk right past them without suspicion. Elizabeth would often be forced to pretend to be a follower of Mitchell's, and she would be made to participate in his bizarre rituals. This level of manipulation and control is a chilling reminder of the power that kidnappers can wield over their victims. What Elizabeth endured in those 9 months is a testament to the strength and resilience of the human spirit. On the morning of June 5, 2002, the police received a panicked call from Elizabeth Smart's mother, Elizabeth Edmonds. She reported her 14-year-old daughter missing from their Salt Lake City home. When officers arrived on the scene, they found Elizabeth's bed unmade, but her younger sister Mary Catherine, who shared the room, claimed to have been asleep at the time. The police immediately launched an investigation, canvassing the neighborhood, and questioning family members and friends. Elizabeth's parents provided investigators with a detailed description of their daughter and the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. As the investigation progressed, police discovered a crucial piece of evidence that would later prove to be the key to finding Elizabeth. A witness reported seeing a white-haired man and a woman with a long, curly-haired woman walking Elizabeth into the nearby mountains. This account was initially dismissed, but it would resurface later as a pivotal piece of evidence. The FBI was called in to assist with the investigation, and a massive search effort was launched in the surrounding areas. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's family and friends launched their own search efforts, posting flyers and spreading the word on local radio stations. The community rallied around the Smart family, offering support and resources to aid in the search. As the investigation continued, two individuals emerged as prime suspects: Brian David Mitchell, a handyman who had worked for the Smart family, and his wife Wanda Barzee. Mitchell had been known to have a history of erratic behavior and had made some unusual comments about having a vision to take Elizabeth to Mexico. The police brought Mitchell in for questioning several times, but he consistently maintained his innocence. Wanda Barzee was also questioned, but her alibi checked out, and investigators weren't sure if she was involved or just misguided. Both Mitchell and Barzee had a history of mental health issues, which added to the complexity of the case. Meanwhile, a red herring had emerged in the form of a suspect named Brent Kirkham, a friend of the Smart family who had been known to have a grudge against Elizabeth. Investigators spent months pursuing leads and interviewing witnesses related to Kirkham, only to discover that he had a solid alibi for the time of Elizabeth's disappearance. This misdirection wasted precious time and resources, leaving investigators wondering if they had been misled. As the investigation dragged on, hope began to fade, and the community's attention began to shift to the possibility that Elizabeth might be gone for good. The police continued to follow leads, but it seemed like the longer they searched, the less likely it was to find Elizabeth alive. In a shocking twist, it came to light that Brian David Mitchell, the man convicted of kidnapping Elizabeth Smart, had been living under the radar for years, not in a prison cell, but in a psychiatric facility. Mitchell's family had been trying to get him committed for years due to his erratic behavior, and in 2003, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. However, this new revelation shed light on the possibility that Mitchell's behavior was not entirely sane, which raises questions about his culpability in the kidnapping. Was Mitchell mentally fit to stand trial, or was he using his erratic behavior as a tactic to avoid accountability? The court's decision to try him as sane sparked a heated debate that is still ongoing today. This revelation has significant implications on the case, as it suggests that Mitchell may not have been entirely aware of his actions. His defense team argued that Mitchell's behavior was a result of his mental illness, and that he was not capable of making rational decisions. This new information may have changed the course of the trial, and could have potentially led to a different verdict. It's hard to imagine what the outcome would have been if Mitchell's mental illness had been a central focus of the trial. His competency to stand trial remains a topic of debate among experts. In the end, Brian David Mitchell was convicted of multiple counts of kidnapping and rape. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His wife, Wanda Barzee, was also convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Elizabeth Smart's family was finally able to heal and move on from the traumatic experience. The trial provided Elizabeth with a sense of closure and justice, and she has since become an advocate for missing persons and victims of sexual assault. After the trial, Elizabeth Smart's story inspired a book and a documentary, as well as a number of advocacy efforts. She has become known as a powerful voice for victims of crime, and has traveled the country to share her story and raise awareness about the importance of never giving up hope. Brian David Mitchell remains incarcerated, and his wife, Wanda Barzee, was released from prison in 2018 after serving 15 years. Elizabeth Smart continues to inspire others with her strength and resilience. Her story serves as a reminder that even in the darkest of times,